24 teams have become 16, and over the next weeks, they'll fight to raise the Summoners Cup as we embark onto the road to the championship, starting with KT Rolster versus Team Liquid. Welcome to World's Countdown, where for 30 minutes we introduce you to the teams competing in the group stage and share some names to know until the timer reaches 0 and we jump into Champions Select. I'm James Dash Patterson, kicking off the group stages alongside Indiana Frosker in black, Jake Spawn Tiberi, and Joshua Jat Leesman. That's right, 3 analysts for the group stage here at Worlds, because if the play-ins were any indication, the games are only going to get better. They're only going to get hotter and more action-packed than they were then. How are you guys feeling coming into these 8 days?
I mean, the sleep schedule was a little bit of a teeter-totter to get used to, but I'm actually really amped right now. I didn't think I was going to be, sleepy, and now suddenly, countdown hit 0, and I'm ready.
I am full of energy.
I mean, the play-ins, to me, were surprisingly competitive, and knowing that the best teams from play-in are slotting into usually being underdogs in groups just makes me excited for the quality of play we're going to see.
And I think the relative strength is where it becomes interesting, right? Because we had 2 teams in G2 and Cloud9 that were elevating in their own region and did seem to falter during play-in. So now it becomes what does the relative strength of each of these regions look like as they stack up against each other?
I think it was something that was dropped during the play-in coverage, but the idea that if you were to look at the results of the play-ins only, it might be a little disappointing in the fact that, the favorites were the ones, in a sense, who moved on. But you really have to go back and look at those games and look at the competitiveness, rather, of that stage to understand how all of these teams and regions are performing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It wasn't just about the best-of-1 stage, because you always expect that there's going to be some upsets in a best-of-1 double round-robin group format like that. But in the best-of-5, how competitive our emerging regions were, I think that was the real, true success story, especially for teams like Gambit.
Well, the play-ins have brought us to where we are today, and while this squad is bringing you the action here, our 15 partners from all corners of the world are following the action to hit fans across the globe.
Yeah, it just reminds you how global this sport really is. All the different regions, all the different fan bases coming to play, every single one of them behind their team, right? We have so many different regions here in the group stage.
The representation here on this stage is quite widespread, and we hope to keep it so. Last weekend, 4 teams secured a spot at the group stage, and even though the favorites advanced in the end, it was a lot tougher than many people expected it to be.
And I think you have to kick it off with the Cloud9 series. I don't think coming out of the best of ones, anyone expected Gambit to put up the fight that they were able to. Cloud9 did falter across the map in certain areas as well. And I think the fact that that came down to 5 games, in the end, it was victorious for the Cloud9 lineup. But even individuals at the end of it, most notably, Jensen did look shaky as that series progressed.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about Cloud9 versus Gambit, also Infinity versus G2. I mean, there was some really tense moment there for European fans. It felt like the only really decisive best-of-5 was Detonation Focus Me versus Edward Gaming.
Right, that was the only 3-0 of that stage. Of course, we're looking at Supermassive and Infinity, who challenged both G-Rex and G2, although fell short. So again, just speaking to the competitiveness, rather, of that stage. Now, as a reminder, in the group stage, the teams will play 6 games in a double round robin, with the top 2 from each group advancing to the quarterfinals as the 1st and 2nd seed. Let's get a quick rundown of the groups. In Group A, we have Flash Wolves, Afrika Freaks, Fongbu Buffalo, and G2. Let's talk about this set of teams.
For me, looking at Group A, I actually think it's kind of the true group of death, if you will. I mean, the idea is it's supposed to mean that there are not enough spots for how competitive the group can be. Whereas most people look at Group B, they see the likes of RNG, they see the likes of Gen.G, and they're like, that's group of death for the Western teams. And while that may be true, Group A, we don't know the power level of Flash Wolves and PvB. They could be very surprising, and then when you throw that into the mix, we don't know what type of form of Freak is going to come in or anything like that.
And that's what I was going to say. Even if you do know the relative power level of these teams, you don't know how they're going to turn up on the international stage, because we have seen such varying performance from the LMS and from now the VCS as they come into these tournaments. So I'm excited to see whether, they are good teams, but can they bring it when it counts in best of ones is a different question.
Yeah, and I'm just impressed with the overall strength of the groups. Whether or not you have a different definition of what group of death means, I think the strongest groups in terms of relative power are groups B and C. Those are the 2 groups that have the Chinese and Korean teams, which are historically the best teams in the group stage. Korean teams have an 81% all-time game win rate in group stage since 2014. That is absurd, and Korean teams have never failed to advance from a group stage. So from a Western team perspective, as Frosk mentioned, 3 out of the 10 Western teams that have been put into Korea-China groups that are B and C have advanced. So those are insane groups, especially when you have good teams in there.
So Group A, feels like it could be anyone's, depending on how these initial matches go. Group B, Group C, a little bit more decided, top heavy. What about Group D, the only group we haven't talked about? That's Fnatic, 100 Thieves, Invictus, and G-Rex.
I mean, I talked about this on euphoria, but I actually feel that this is the group in terms of if you're trying to find a Western hope. Most people are grabbing hold of Fnatic just because of the shakedown of the draw. I don't know what form Invictus Gaming is going to come in. When it comes to clutch, you talked about we don't know how these teams perform on an international stage. I've got plenty of footage of IG on an international stage where they just choke and crash and burn. So there's a very real possibility that Fnatic not just exit this group, but exit this group in first.
Yeah, I think it's a definite possibility with no Korean team. I do have to clarify what I just said. It's since 2014, since we've gone to this 4-team, 4-group format, that a Korean team hasn't made it out. There was a Korean team that failed groups in 2013, but Group D is, to me, a little bit of the group of life as far as who could potentially get out. That group, although I'm not expecting it to happen, shares extremely high similarities with the WE-TSM Misfits group that we had last year, with the final team there also being an LMS team, the exact same 4 regions, as well as the Great Western Hope in one of the same groups.
All right, well, with the groups fresh in our minds, I just want to approach the conversation of favorites as we usually do around the World Championship. I think most people would be quick to say that both the LCK champion in KT Rolter and the LPL champion in RNG are by far and away the 2 favorites here in the tournament. So while we deliberate on this, I want you at home to voice your opinion as well. Do you favor RNG, KT, or any other team in the tournament, otherwise known as the field? So you're taking one team, another team, or 14 teams. You make your pick.
So strange. TSM suddenly seems to be winning a lot.
I'm going to pick KT.
You're going to pick KT.
And I know there is a lot of RNG hype coming in, and I know that the field could also be an attractive choice. But as far as dominant Korean teams at Worlds, they have won the past 5 World Championships, and Korea team versus Korea team has been a final 3 years in a row. And KT is the best Korean team that was the super team that was supposed to be here last year. I feel like they finally put it all together this year, finishing first in the summer split, winning the summer split title. They play through top, they play through bottom. They have a great center of the map as well with the shoving young mid laner and an extremely experienced, probably best jungler in the world score. So I love KT coming into this tournament. I don't think they're destined to win, but I do think they are my favorites.
And it is hard to argue with history sometimes when it comes to the Korean teams and how they perform at the World Championship. Frost, what are you thinking?
I mean, it's definitely the safest answer, and I do agree with every point that Jat made. As the Chinese representative, I'm going to say that I think that RNG must be looked at, and I have them favorites. I think especially if it goes to a best-of-5 5th game, anytime Uzi is in that situation, he has won this year. They have won 99% of the things that they have attended. He just needs to grab that world's crown. It's actually
They played 99 tournaments this
year? As soon as I said it, I was like, no, Jat, don't do it. No, but they call it the Golden Rain.
Somewhere in there.
They call it the Golden Rain. I'm going to call it the Golden Road, and it's this idea of winning spring, summer, MSI, Rift Rivals, and now the final crown of Worlds.
And I think you're both just making a critical error, because that's a lot of excitement for KT, and that is a lot of faith in consistency out of a Chinese team coming into a tournament.
All right, Spawn.
I'm going to take the field. When you have teams like Gen.G, returning world champions, they've made back-to-back finals, Afrika. If you got them in a quarter, I think every single team in this, Worlds tournament would be very disappointed, because they're going to be a tough opponent. And whilst they have not shown it yet, IG, when they are in form, have been able to kick some butt. In the LPL, we'll see whether they're able to bring it, but I just think the field has so many attractive options. And then you go into, true wildcards, like people like TL. Can they bring it together? People like Fnatic, are they able to make a run? I just think there's some dangerous teams here that, could be able to knock some people out. And as soon as people start getting knocked out, then you got a shot.
I mean, taking a look at the fan voting right now,
some smart people in Twitch chat
actually does agree with Spawn here. Although I must say, in more of an informal note, that TSM actually came out on top in the voting. We just didn't have the program tracking the TSM votes. So. Informal winner, Team Solomon.
Just as I'm about to compliment the people of Twitch chat, this happened.
Yeah, right.
That's what you have to throw out.
And then they throw their credibility out the window like that. What's your thought here? What was the response you were kind of?
I was just saying he's flaming me for having consistency in the Chinese team. The second name out of your mouth was Invictus Gaming.
Spawn gets to have Invictus. He gets to have Genji. He gets to have Afrika. He gets to
Afrika,
have
yeah.
Fnatic.
And
he gets to have
Flashwolves.
Liquid, Flash Wolves.
Yeah.
Had to sneak that in there.
Yeah, Liquid Flash Wolves.
I get some good ones, but I think the thing is, right, is that IG have been inconsistent. So now they're going to bring their consistency to this tournament.
Oh, they've already blown it.
And RNG will do the opposite.
the flip side, yeah.
fair
I'd just
enough.
like to say, only one person on this desk has won the prediction pineapple 2 splits in a row.
That's
so
true.
KT
That's my pineapple.
No,
from MSI, I won it in
All
second
hail.
split. Yeah, but we'll see.
All hail Jet, prediction king. Now, on that note, let's check out what we've got coming up on day one here, where we start with a clash between Team Liquid and KT Rolster. From there, EDG look to continue their solid form against Mad Team before the teams in Group A take to the stage. In our last 2 games, we'll get the first look at reigning champions of MSI, RNG, and the winners from last year's Worlds, Genji, formerly Samsung Galaxy, as they face off against Cloud9 and Vitality, respectively. When we return, we hear from Team Liquid about the uphill battle in Game 1, and we go over some little-known names coming into Day 1 of groups. As we go to break, though, here's a video that tracks the career of one of NA's most prolific players. Welcome back to Worlds Countdown, where we're about 15 minutes away from the opening ceremony. Chef Tahm Kench there in attendance himself in Busan, getting a glimpse of the stage that the players will be taking to in not so long. And as we count down to the first day of groups, we also want to introduce some names that you should know ahead of the action. For Day 1 of groups, those names are Mad Team's jungler Kongyu, Fangwu Buffalo's top laner Zeros, and Afrika Freak's top laner Keen. First up, Mad Team's Kongyu.
Yeah, Kongyu is the player on this lineup to watch. Jungler, plays a lot of high-tempo junglers, expecting to pull out Trundle, Olaf, be able to run over the enemy jungler. The reason this is so important for this team is their solo lane is not so great at the moment. So I'm expecting him to play heavily around the bottom side of the map. If he's able to allow Uniboy to push in and leave lane, that is a big plus for this lineup. And I think that most of the victories that I was able to watch where they looked good, he was able to get a lot of jungle control in the earlier stages of the game. Think, 8 to 15 minute mark and open up the map for his team.
And chat, what a group to be a jungler in, right? It's set up to be quite a show.
Yeah, especially having to go up against Score in some of these games. I do think you could classify Mad Team as a jungle-focused team.
Yep.
Some teams are bot or top-focused. This one is jungle-focused, and as a jungler, that's always fun to watch.
Yeah, very much so. Next up, let's talk about Fangwu Buffalo's Zeros.
So Zeros up on the top side is a carry-oriented top laner, which fits perfectly right now in this meta. We not only have some tweaks to Fiora, but Urgot's been running rampant, and this guy can certainly make an impact on those 2 champions. Now, what is really inspiring about PvV, and I've looked at a lot of their games, they play very clean, standard League of Legends, a bit closer to EVOS than, say, the Gigabyte Marines in terms of play style. And with a top laner like him, they can play a side lane rather effectively, which you usually don't expect from kind of these emerging region teams. You expect them not to have that coordination to group up as a big 5v5 and just try to roll into teams, but they can play a side lane no problem.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They have a lot of kills, but in some cases, it's just punishing mistakes, and they don't necessarily have to bring their whole team to 5v5 team fights anymore. So I think it does weigh more towards a global meta in that regard.
Yeah, and there's so many amazing top laners in that group, which is why I'm also watching Keen, who's in the same group, as well as Wunder being in this group. But this guy, as the most important player to the #2 seed of Korea, has had an amazing year, ranking him 4th in our top 20 players at Worlds. He has 20 solo kills, which is the most in the LCK. He has 25% of his team's overall kills, and that's with a jungle proximity that is negative 2.2%, which means the enemy jungler actually goes top lane more than Spirit, his own jungler, does. So this guy does an extreme amount of work and is extremely good, which is why I can't wait to see him.
Building advantages in the face of adversity. And while we talk about kind of the openness of Group A, or at least how difficult it is to put a finger on maybe, pure favorites for the two to get out, you're looking at players like Keane, right, in the top lane, like Zeros in the top lane, as playmakers for their team to be the difference between a third-place finish and a second and first-place finish in groups.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing around Keane is if you isolate him, he wins you the game. So you don't have to get a jungler up there. In some situations, it's actually better for him to draw some pressure and allow people like Spirit and Koro to have free access to the rest of the map because he just deals with it so beautifully for a young player.
A few names for you to keep your eyes on. While we narrow our focus in on Game 1, we asked Team Liquid's Coach Kane about the practice for Worlds and how it's all about finding their own play style.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Team Liquid's Coach Kane, and it's been a while since we've seen Team Liquid take the trophy in Oakland, so how's preparation for Worlds been going?
네, 그게 팀 리그를 본 지가 거의 NALCS를 우승해서 좀 됐잖아요. 이번에 롤드컵 때 준비가 어떻게 되고 있었어요?
일단 저희가 이제 결승 끝나고 나서 조금 휴가를 조금 가지고 바로 한국으로 와서 이제 부트캠프 하면서 준비를 했어요. 그래서 되게 다양한 팀, 한국 팀들, 중국 팀들 아니면 대만 팀들이랑 연습을 많이 했었는데 그 과정에서 이제 저희가 잘하는, 저희가 자신 있는 약간 챔피언 그리고 저희가 자신 있는 스타일대로 약간 준비를 하려고 많이 노력을 했었죠.
So after winning the championships, we took some time off and then immediately came to Korea around 3 weeks ago, where we were practicing with like a lot of the Korean teams and the Chinese teams, and basically picking on our unique play styles and practicing that.
And here's hoping to the preparation paying off because you guys are the first game of the day, and it's a big one since you're against the LCK's #1 seed KT Rolster. So how is Team Liquid going to pull off this win?
이번 팀 리퀴시 오늘 첫 경기하고 그 이제만 KT 로스터 같이 만날 거잖아요. 그래서 이 팀 리퀴를 어떻게를 이길 수 있을까요?
이제 말씀하신 대로 이제 KT가 이제 LCK 챔피언이고 이제 굉장히 강한 팀이고 그래서 사실 저희도 약간 긴장을 많이 하는 것 같아요. 선수들 지금 봐서는. 근데 일단 저희가 준비한 대로 어떤 약간 초반부터 좀 강하게 몰아치는 식으로 한번 해보고 준비를 좀 했어요. 네.
So KT roster is definitely a very strong team. We're going to continue to like practice our own styles, just keep at it because that's what we're going to be good at.
Well, Kane, thank you, and we're wishing you the best of luck. That's it for us here. Back to you.
Keeping their eyes on KT, they know it's an uphill battle, but one they feel prepared for. Let's take a closer look at this first game of groups. NALCS champions Team Liquid versus LCK champions in KT Rolster. Already a lot of people's tournament favorite. Team Liquid have been a dominant force in their region this year, but now they're being tested from the get-go as they face off against the Titans from Korea.
And I think maybe you can take some solace in the fact that they're not alone. I mean, you're facing RNG, Gen.G, KT Rolster. Today for the Western teams, it is just a really rough day, but it feels like we're stepping out of the boxing ring and into a cage match with the Grizzly Bear. Like, it doesn't get harder than this for
How did I get here?
It's a massive fight right off the bat. Doublelift does believe that underdogs can harness some advantage going into these matches, so they're going to have to try and harness that power today. And listen, it's a team that puts everything through Doublelift and everything through bottom lane. They usually play a defensive top side. Pobelter tries to split or get push in lane so he can move bottom lane, but they win by controlling vision, winning the 2v2, and playing through Doublelift in team fights, and that was getting them to multiple 3-0 finals in spring and summer to be the #1 seed here for North America.
See, you say that's how they win games, and I watched a lot of their games, and it just seems like they kind of fumble their way through the mid game and then crush people in late game team fighting. And what we've seen historically from Marta versus Doublelift is if he fumbles one team fight, Marta just makes him pay over and over again. And that makes me a little bit nervous for this Team Liquid lineup because you can't afford to make, early to mid-game mistakes if you expect to be able to claw your way back in. There is no clawing your way back in against a team like KT.
All right, some iconic moments between those two players themselves. On the other side, as you mentioned, you've got KT, one of the favorites to not just finish at the top of their group, but to win the whole dang thing. So again, while we talk about the matchup and the uphill battle for this squad, we have to remember the the names on this roster and how they were put together for exactly this moment, falling short last year, hoping to come back even stronger this time around.
I mean, it's legacy, history, statistics, and every single metric that you can measure. This team are giants. They didn't come to compete. They came here to win. They were designed for this tournament around score, and they are just as dominant.
And they're here a year late based on their own expectations.
Right.
So a lot of people actually expected them to break up when they failed to get to Worlds last year, but they stuck together. They got Score his first domestic title after playing in Korea for 6+ years. So it is cathartic for them to get here, but there's the potential that it's maybe going to be a little bit rusty because they have played one best of 5 in the past 2 months, and that was the final they played over in the LCK. So that is the fear for KT. I look at their roster, it's full of experience, it's full of talent.
It's also kind of the expectations and the pressure. You know, this is the World Championship inside Korea. Kingzone is no longer here, but you also don't have SKT. It's just Jinji, formerly known as Samsung, but it's really Score who has to hold this mantle with all of those expectations on him. And KT Rolster, fans of them know that it can be a bit of a roller coaster.
So is this the best opportunity for KT to be upset, is actually here in Game 1?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is, because I think that what's going to happen is we're going to see a conflicting meta style because there has been no games to really draw on what meta will be. And I think that they will be under significant pressure right now. We keep saying it, but Worlds in Korea with maybe a Chinese favorite, if you do back RNG in that regard. This is the team that everyone expects to come out and make a statement game.
Right.
And we've already highlighted the crucialness of the early game for team fighting teams. If Team Liquid can get it in their favor, they do have a situation where they run over this game.
And there's also that really interesting thing where a lot of people, and do not get me wrong, this is heavy favorite to KT Rolster, but a lot of people didn't expect TL to take down RNG at MSI. RNG,
Right.
that wasn't the, they had time to warm up, but the thing is that they did it through the bottom lane. Like if you gave Doublelift to say, you're gonna have the winning bot lane matchup, you can actually win in the lane phase. They played the early game, they crushed it through the mid game. Like the blueprint is there that TL can upset these giants.
Right. At the end of the day, anything can happen in groups. We've seen it before, right? And so we can't rule out any possibilities. But I always come back to this idea that when we look at two teams that maybe fill or check a lot of the same boxes as the team they're up against, the odds get even worse, right? The idea that, well, if we play the same style and you just play it better than me, there's almost nowhere that I can necessarily over-index or outperform in order to beat.
Well, it's interesting because I don't think they necessarily play the same style. I think KT definitely puts a lot of resources through the top lane, and Smeb has the best CSD at 15 of all top laners in Korea, and they still get contribution from their bottom lane, but I think KT has a much more balanced attack than Team Liquid has. It's a bad stylistic matchup for Team Liquid, in my opinion, because Deft and Mata do match up so well with the strength of Team Liquid and then over-index on the rest of the map.
I love that you jumped to the top lane because despite feeling confident going into Game 1, KT Rolster's Smeb is coming into his top lane matchup with a lot of respect for his opponent.
북미 쪽이 이제 조금 약하다는 이런 얘기들이 많았었는데 저는 북미의 1시드 팀은 항상 잘했다고 생각하거든요. 그래서 팀 리퀴드도 굉장히 잘할 것 같고 임팩트 선수는 좀 대단한 것 같아요. 이제 타지에 가서 이렇게 너무 잘 적응하고 팀에 잘 어울리는 모습을 보니까 너무 대단한 것 같아요.
You know, and it's something to consider how Impact shows up at World Championships, right? We've had this conversation in the past when he was on Cloud9, coming in, hey, he hasn't looked so hot throughout the year, and this is definitely not a World Championship, caliber Impact like he has been in the past. And then he does show up in hard carry games. So there's going to be a lot of eyes pointing at that top lane.
It's one of those things. Form is temporary, class is forever, and Impact is a classy player. Like, you can say whatever you want about his recent performances, but historically, this guy has been world-class.
There are certain picks that he can gravitate to band-aid himself in this meta right now. Sion's still very capable. He can go towards the Ornn. So as long as Impact is grabbing these comfort picks, more so the tanks, the engage tools, then I have total faith that he'll be okay against Smeb. But if he tries to go carry to carry, I think it's all going to burn down very quickly.
If you watch the NALCS finals, you do not give Sion to Impact because it was disgusting what he was doing to Cloud9 with that pick. As we are just minutes away from the opening ceremony, I want to get some predictions for Game 1. So, down the line, starting with you, Frosker, in Game 1 of group stage, who's taking it? KT or TL?
Now I'm going to say...
Don't answer too quick.
I know. I'm going to say KT. I think it's about 75-25 right now. But
Okay.
again, I find it more interesting, this idea of the blueprint being there. You know, if TL win, what actually happened? I think you can actually bait Deft Mata towards a scaling pick, something like the Kai'Sa, prioritize having that bottom lane, and then just make sure that Impact doesn't get blown apart by Smeb. I think that's the one part of the map that you really need to protect. But we've seen it against RNG, TL at MSI, and I think that there is a possibility that it happens day one, game one of this tournament.
It's tough. I mean, we keep talking about the upset, and that's because it is an upset. I mean, if you want to give it a weighting, it's like a 65-35, somewhere around there for me. I think that the only thing that we can say is that maybe the meta will evolve in a way that we didn't expect. And we saw a couple of the playing teams say, you know, we didn't see it going this way. I thought we were going to see a lot more aggression out of the jungle position and some things change, and I expect it to still go back towards that. So maybe a meta misread might hurt them. Maybe, you know, the fact that they haven't played for all that long. But I think that, you know, you have to go away from this and say if KT lose this game, they will be very disappointed at their start of Worlds. And maybe we'll get scarier as it goes on.
2 votes for KT here. No surprise necessarily. Jat, what are you thinking?
I mean, I hear the percentages that you guys are saying. 65-35 for KT. I just want to be real. Like, you have to understand who is in this game. We have a great, historically great Korean top laner in this matchup. We have an amazing bottom lane that can be played through. I'm talking about Smeb, Deft, and Mata. An early game for KT Rolster. They are 27-4 when they have an early game lead. And TL is not great in the early game where KT is. So what do you expect? I'm not a biased analyst right here. It's KT Rolster. I think 80-20.
Thank you very much for that, Jat. 3-0 predictions for KT across the board here on the analyst desk to kick it off.
I mean, how can you argue with the facts like that?
Right, he threw some numbers at me, and if I've learned anything from my time with Jat, it's to believe in the stats, and that they're usually right where I'm not. Ladies and gentlemen, countdown on the clock, 20 seconds to game time and the kickoff of the group stages. With that, it's just about time for us to hand it over to the arena for the opening ceremony.